The cowboy lived on a wide-open ranch where the land stretched for miles and the sky seemed endless. He woke up early every morning when the first light, while the sun touched the fields and the horses neighed softly in the distance. He liked the quiet. Before the day began, it was his favorite time. He would step outside and breathe the cool air and watch the light change on the hills and the pastures. He worked hard every day, tending to the animals and fixing the fences the ranch needed constant care. He knew every corner of it and every creature that lived there. He knew which horse needed extra attention and which part of the land needed repair. He took pride in knowing his ranch like the back of his hand. People in town respected him. He was strong and dependable. They admired how he could handle any problem that came up. He never asked for help, even when the work was too much. He believed a man should be able to take care of his own things. That belief had guided him all his life. Cowboy had a house near the main barn. It was simple but sturdy. He had built it himself years ago with his own hands. He liked the way the wood smelled and how the floorboards creaked in certain spots. He liked the way the wind sounded when it blew. Through the trees nearby, he would often sit on the porch in the evening watching the sunset. The sky would turn orange and pink and sometimes purple. He liked those moments because it felt like the world was at peace. He could hear the faint sounds of birds and the distant lowing of cows. It reminded him why he worked so hard even. Though he had everything a man could want, from land and animals to a home and respect, he felt something missing. He did not think about it too much. He kept busy with his work, and that kept his mind from dwelling on things he did not have. The cowboy had a son. He thought about him sometimes, but the thoughts were quick and brief. He had left the son with his ex long ago because he felt he could not handle raising a child while trying to build the ranch. He told himself it was for the best, that the son was better off with someone else. He had been too busy trying to make a life that could survive and grow. Sometimes when he rode through the fields, he thought he saw his son in the distance, a boy running through the grass or leaning on the fence, looking up at him, watching over the land. He would blink and it was gone. The sight would stay with him for the day. He could feel a small tug in his heart, but he pushed it aside and focused on the work. The cowboy liked to ride early in the morning. He would saddle one of the horses and move slowly through the fields. He knew the land like it was a map. Drawn in his mind, he knew where the water ran and which patches of grass were green and which were dry. Could smell the change in the wind when it was going to rain or when the seasons were turning. He had friends who worked nearby, other ranchers and cowhands. They respected him and sometimes sought his advice. He would help if he could, but he often preferred to work alone. He liked the feeling of controlling his own day and making his own choices. The ranch was not without its challenges. There were storms that would hit hard and animals that would fall sick. Sometimes machinery would break or fences would collapse. He faced each problem the same way, slowly, carefully, and with persistence. He did not complain. He just did what needed to be done evenings for his time to rest, but he rarely sat still for long. He would walk through the barn, checking on the horses and cows, making sure everyone was comfortable. He would clean the tools and organize the supplies. He felt a deep satisfaction in knowing everything was in order there. Were times when the cowboy felt loneliness. He did not like to admit it. He told himself that the work and the animals were enough. He told himself that he did not need anyone else. He had built his life carefully, and nothing had shaken him. He had everything he thought he wanted, yet sometimes when the sun went down and he sat on the porch, he would see the empty space in his heart. He would remember the laughter of a child he had not seen grow up. He would think about the birthdays missed and the stories never shared. He would remember the small hand that once clung to his own and the small voice that once called him Father. He would ride out late in the evenings, sometimes into the hills when he was alone, with only the sound of the wind and the horses. He could let his thoughts drift. He would remember teaching a child to ride a horse, to run with the wind, to laugh when the rain fell on the grass. He would remember the small joys that had been lost to time and distance. The cowboy worked through these feelings the same way he worked through problems on the ranch. Slowly he faced them when he could not avoid them. He remembered small moments of connection with his son, the first time he heard him laugh, the first time he saw him walk, the first time he called him by name. Those memories were both painful and sweet. They reminded him of what he had lost and also of what could still be found if he was willing to try. He felt a pull toward his son, but he did not know how. To begin, the years had made it complicated. The distance had grown, but the memory of love was still strong-hained. Slept in the simple room above the barn most nights. He would lie awake listening to the sounds of the ranch breathing with it and through it. He thought about the future and what it might hold. He wondered if it was too late to repair what had been broken. He wondered if a small whisper could change the course of his life. The cowboy had everything the world said a man could want, but he felt the weight of what he had missed. The land and animals were his life, but they could not fill the empty space left by time and absence. The thought of his son lingered like a quiet echo. It would not be ignored. He would rise again the next morning before the sun and take care of the ranch, as he always did, but the feeling of something waiting for him grew stronger. The thought of reaching out to the boy he had left behind came more often. He began to realize that the life he had built was strong but incomplete without the son he had missed. The cowboy understood he was not truly whole. Days continued with hard work and quiet reflection. The horses ran through the fields and the sun painted the skies with color, but in the cowboy's heart there was a new awareness of what mattered more than anything else. The land and the work were important, but family was priceless. The whisper of memory and hope began to grow, and the cowboy knew that change was coming. The ranch remained his domain and the work his duty, but the thought of reconnecting with his son became the guiding force behind his days. He felt a mix of fear and hope, but he understood that without action the years would pass and the chance might be lost forever. He began to see that the greatest strength was not in solitude but in love and presence. Cowboy continued his daily routine, but now with a new purpose. He watched the horses and the sun and the land with the same care, but he also watched for signs of his son and the world around him. He listened for small voices that could guide him back to what he had lost. Wind through the trees seemed to carry whispers of possibility, and he knew that the story of his life was about to change. Son grew up in a small house in town where the streets were quiet and the neighbors knew each other. He remembered his father as someone strong and distant, someone who worked hard and rarely had time for him. He loved his father, but he also felt the emptiness of absence. He learned to be independent, to solve problems on his own, and to keep feelings locked inside. It would watch the other children with their fathers riding bikes or playing catch, and he would imagine what it would be like to have that for himself. He tried not to let it hurt him too much. He focused on school, on chores, on helping where he could, and on spending time with friends who understood some of the loneliness that came from missing someone important sometimes. He would sneak away to a place near the hills where he knew his father worked. He could see the fields from a distance, and sometimes he thought he saw movement, as if his father was riding a horse and checking on the land. He would wave from afar. Even though he knew he was not seen, he felt connected in that small way, and it gave him a quiet comfort. He would write letters to his father sometimes, but he never sent them. Put down thoughts about school, about achievements, about the little things he wanted to share. He poured his heart onto the pages and then folded them carefully and put them away in a drawer. He did not know if the letters would ever matter, but writing helped him breathe. He grew older and learned the value of hard work. He would help around the house and take on responsibilities beyond his age. He wanted to show he could handle life even without his father. He wanted to make him proud, even if the pride was only imagined. He wanted to prove that he could be strong and capable in a world that often felt uncertain. Sometimes he would hear stories from people in town about his father, how he had built a ranch from nothing, how he was respected and strong, how he could handle problems that would have stopped other men. He felt pride and frustration at the same time. He loved his father for his strength, but he also wished he had shared some of that strength with him. There were moments when he felt anger at the absence, the missed moments, the forgotten birthdays, and the holidays that passed without the father he longed for. He tried to understand why his father had chosen work and independence over family, but the understanding did not always come easily. The questions lingered and sometimes kept him awake at night. He had friends who tried to include him in their lives. Their fathers would come to school events and help with projects and celebrate small victories. He would smile and be happy for them, but he could not shake the feeling that something was missing in his own life, something important that could not be replaced by friends or toys or games. He would imagine conversations with his father in his mind. He would ask questions he wished he could ask aloud. He would imagine the advice he would get, the stories. He would hear the lessons he would learn. If only his father had been there. He kept those imaginary conversations as treasures. Even though they could not fill the real emptiness, as he grew older, he started to understand the world better. He began to notice the hard work his father must have done to build the ranch. He could see how difficult it must have been to face storms and illness and challenges alone. He started to feel a mixture of respect and sorrow for the man he had not fully known. He would sometimes talk to his mother about his father. He would ask questions about his childhood, about the ranch, about the man he had heard about in stories. She would answer carefully, giving what she could without trying to judge. She wanted him to understand, and yet to protect him from pain. The conversations were bittersweet, leaving him with more understanding and more longing at the same time. He would practice small acts of independence like his father had. He would fix things around the house, or help neighbors, or take care of animals. He felt a quiet connection through the work. He felt closer to the father. He barely knew when he worked with his hands and solved problems on his own. Evenings were often lonely. He would sit by the window looking at the hills in the distance. Imagining his father riding through them, he would wonder what it would be like to ride alongside him, to learn from him, to share the day together. The dreams stayed alive in his mind, keeping hope alive, even when reality felt far away. School and work filled most of his days, but the thought of his father never left him. It was a quiet presence, like a shadow that followed him everywhere. He would hear stories from town people and neighbors, and he would imagine his father in those moments, handling problems with skill and patience. The pride he felt was mixed with sadness that he was not there to see it himself. He started keeping a small notebook of memories he wanted to share with his father when the time came. We'd write about school achievements, about friends, about lessons learned, and about the small joys of everyday life. He hoped one day he could show his father how much he had grown and what he had accomplished even without his guidance. He also began to notice the people around him who had fathers present. He would watch how they interacted, how they laughed, how they made mistakes, and learned from them. He felt a longing to have those experiences, and sometimes a gentle envy that others could share those moments so easily. He began to dream of one day visiting the ranch. He would imagine walking through the fields, seeing the horses and cows, hearing the wind through the trees. He would imagine sitting with his father and asking questions and hearing stories and learning the lessons he had missed. He held those dreams close to his heart, even when they seemed far away. The son learned patience in a way that others did not. He learned to wait for moments that might never come, and to hold hope even when it felt fragile. He learned to work hard and to value the small joys in life, and to cherish memories, both real and imagined. He learned to hold love quietly and carefully. Even when it was distant past, he grew taller and stronger. He started to notice the changes. In himself, he could see the reflection of his father in his own hands, and in the way he worked and faced challenges. He felt a connection through the similarities, even though the time spent together was almost nothing. The bond was quiet and hidden, but it was real. He kept up the routine of schoolwork, friends, and chores, but the thought of his father became more frequent. He would think about how it might feel to hear his voice, to see his smile, to feel guidance and support. He knew that the connection was possible if only the right moment came, and both were willing. Even when he laughed and played with friends, he could feel the empty space in his heart. It was a subtle ache that never fully went away. It reminded him of what was missing, and also of what could still be found if courage and patience came together. It was a reminder that some things were worth waiting and hoping for, even when the years had passed. The son began to imagine small ways of connecting. He would dream of riding a horse through the fields, learning the names of the plants and animals, seeing the sunrise from the hills. He imagined conversations filled with laughter and stories and quiet moments. He imagined a bond that could grow stronger with each passing day. He started to see the strength and flaws in both himself and his father. He realized that love could be quiet and work could be hard, but that both could exist at the same time. He began to understand that the past could not be changed, but the future could be shaped with effort and courage. The son held on to hope that one day he would speak to his father in person, and that the years of absence could be softened by honesty and love. He kept the letters and the notebook and the dreams close as reminders that the connection was still possible, that The bond was still alive, and that even a whisper could start to heal the distance. Lived each day with work and school and friends, but he carried the quiet longing in his heart. The longing kept him strong and focused, and patient it kept him. Aware of what truly mattered, even as he faced the ordinary challenges of growing up and finding his place in the world. The son learned to balance hope and reality, and to treasure the possibility of reunion. One morning, the cowboy was tending the horses when he heard a soft voice calling from the edge of the field. He looked up, and for a moment his heart skipped a beat. It was a small figure standing near the trees. It took a moment for him to recognize the face, the familiar eyes, the quiet presence. He felt a rush of emotions he had not felt in years. The son had come to see the ranch. He had waited for a time when he felt ready. He had thought about this visit for months, planning how he would approach and what he might say the moment. It was both exciting and terrifying. He had not been sure if his father would welcome him, or if the years of distance would make it impossible. Cowboy dismounted slowly. His hands shook slightly, though he did not want to show it. He walked toward the figure, his mind racing with memories and emotions. The son did not move. He watched carefully, waiting to see how his father would react. The air was filled with the sounds of horses and wind, and the quiet tension of a long-awaited meeting. They were close enough to speak. The son whispered words that seemed to hang in the air for a long time. It was not much, but it carried a world of meaning. The cowboy knelt down slightly to meet the eyes of his child. The world seemed to shrink too. That single moment and the years of absence pressed in around them. They walked together through the fields. The cowboy pointed out landmarks and told small stories of the land and the animals. The son listened carefully, absorbing every detail. He asked questions about the work, the animals, and the challenges his father faced. The purchase conversation was careful at first, as if both were learning how to speak to each other after years apart. The cowboy realized how much he had missed in the son's eyes, and it reminded him of himself at that age, the small gestures of attention and care that he had never given before now seemed precious. He felt a desire to teach and to share and to repair the distance that time had created. Spent hours walking through the ranch, talking and working together. The cowboy showed how to saddle a horse, how to check fences, and how to recognize when an animal was unwell. The son followed closely, learning quickly, asking questions and listening to advice. He began to feel the bond forming slowly, like a stream that had waited years to flow. The sun moved across the sky, and they stopped to rest under the shade of a large tree. The cowboy looked at the son and noticed how much he had grown. The strength in his arms, the focus in his eyes, the quiet confidence. It reminded him of the importance of presence and guidance. He realized that all the work in the world could not replace the moments they were now sharing. The son spoke quietly about life in town, about school, about friends, and small events the cowboy had missed. The cowboy listened with patience, trying to absorb the details. He realized how many stories he had not heard, and how many lessons he had missed giving. He felt a mixture of pride in the son's independence and sorrow for the lost time. As the afternoon passed, they worked together, fixing a broken fence. The cowboy demonstrated how to handle the tools safely and efficiently. The son followed, carefully imitating the movements and learning the patience required for such work. The physical labor allowed them to connect in a way words could not fully express. The cowboy began to tell stories from his own youth about mistakes he had made and lessons learned. He spoke of challenges faced alone and victories achieved through persistence. He wanted the son to understand that life required both strength and humility, and that the greatest achievements were often the relationships built along the way. They shared small meals together, sitting on the grass. The cowboy taught the son simple cooking over a small fire, showing how to prepare food while working in the fields. The son asked questions and followed instructions carefully, learning the skills that were both practical and symbolic of life on the ranch. The moments were simple but rich with meaning. Wind shifted and brought the smell of fresh grass and the distant scent of horses. The cowboy took a deep breath and realized how much he had missed the small joys of teaching and guiding. He felt a quiet gratitude for the chance to reconnect, in a sense of responsibility to nurture the relationship with care and patience. The son began to share more openly about thoughts and feelings he had kept inside. He spoke of longing for guidance and the small frustrations of growing up without his father. He revealed hopes and fears that had not been voiced before. The cowboy listened attentively, understanding that this was the moment of true connection. They rode horses together through the fields, following paths the cowboy had traveled countless times alone. The son learned to control the horse with skill and confidence. The cowboy watched carefully, giving gentle corrections and encouragement. The shared activity created trust and a feeling of partnership that words could not fully capture. Evening approached, and they returned to the main barn. The cowboy showed the son the daily routines of feeding and caring for the animals. The son followed closely, asking questions and helping with tasks. He realized that life on the ranch required both physical effort and attention to detail. The cowboy observed and quietly admired the willingness and dedication of his child. As the light faded, they sat on the porch, looking out over the fields. The cowboy spoke softly about dreams and hopes he had for the future, about the importance of family and connection. He emphasized that mistakes did not define them, but that action and effort could repair the distance of years. The son listened and nodded, understanding the weight of the words. The son felt a mix of relief and joy. He had feared rejection, but found acceptance and care instead. He realized that the bond they were building would require patience and attention, but that the pine foundation had been laid in the simple acts of presence and shared work. The whispers of the past began to transform into conversation and laughter. The cowboy felt emotions he had long buried. He understood the cost of absence and the value of presence. He realized that the whispers of the past could guide the future, and that small gestures of attention and care could begin to heal years of distance. The son had become both a teacher and a reminder of what truly mattered. Night came, and they walked through the fields one last time before returning to the house. The stars appeared overhead, and the quiet of the ranch surrounded them. The cowboy felt a deep sense of connection and responsibility. The son felt hope and belonging. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding and a promise of growth. They sat quietly, reflecting on the day. The cowboy thought of the work ahead and the challenges of life, but now he understood that the most important work was nurturing the bond that had been neglected for so long. The son felt strength and guidance, knowing that his father was present and willing to walk alongside him. The first meeting was over, but the beginning of something new had begun. The past was still there with its losses and regrets, but the present offered opportunity and hope. The cowboy and his son had taken the first steps toward repairing the distance and building a future filled with shared experiences and quiet understanding. They went to bed that night with thoughts of the day lingering in their minds. The cowboy understood that patience and consistency were required to nurture this new connection. The son dreamed of the adventures they could have and the lessons he could learn together. The bond was fragile yet promising, and both knew it would grow stronger with care and attention. The ranch remained the same wide open space, with horses and fields and skies stretching far and wide, but for the first time in years it felt different. It felt alive with possibility and connection. It was no longer just a place of work, but a place where love and presence could grow, and where the whispers of the past could guide them toward a future together. The cowboy woke early the next morning, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He knew today would be another chance to strengthen the bond with his son. He prepared breakfast and then went to the barn to check the horses, making sure everything was ready for the day. The son was waiting quietly, watching his father with a mix of admiration and anticipation. They began the day by feeding the animals. Together, the cowboy showed his son how to measure the feed and how to check each animal for signs of health or discomfort. The son listened carefully, asking questions and trying to remember every detail. He wanted to show that he could help and that he was willing to learn. The cowboy noticed the dedication and felt a quiet pride. After feeding, they moved on to repairing a section of fence that had been damaged during the last storm. The cowboy handed tools to his son and demonstrated techniques, carefully showing how to use strength and patience. Together, he watched closely as the son worked with focus and determination, correcting gently when needed. The process became a shared task and a way to connect without words. They took breaks under the shade of large trees. The cowboy began to talk about his own experiences growing up on the ranch, about times he had failed and learned from mistakes. He wanted the son to understand that life was not always easy, and that learning and growing required effort and persistence. Son listened intently, absorbing the lessons, even when they were difficult to hear. As the morning passed, they moved to a field that needed plowing. The cowboy showed how to prepare the soil and manage the equipment. The son followed, closely learning the rhythm and patience required to complete the work. The activity was physical, but it also created quiet moments of understanding and mutual respect. The cowboy realized that teaching and guiding his son was more rewarding than any achievement. On the ranch during lunch, they sat together on the grass, sharing simple food. The cowboy spoke about the importance of honesty and responsibility. He encouraged the son to speak openly about his feelings and to trust that he would be heard. The son began to open up more, sharing small frustrations about school and friends, and the longing he had felt for his father. The cowboy listened carefully and responded with empathy and guidance. The afternoon brought them to a nearby creek where they would check the water supply and care for the animals that came there to drink. The cowboy showed how to inspect the area for safety and how to ensure the water remained clean and accessible. He explained the importance of thinking ahead and being aware of the needs of all creatures on the ranch. The son followed instructions carefully, asking questions and taking initiative where he could. They spent hours together working and talking. Small moments of laughter emerged naturally as they stumbled over tasks or made small mistakes. The cowboy learned to appreciate the patience required to guide someone who had not experienced the ranch life firsthand. The son learned to value persistence and careful observation. The shared experience created trust and a growing sense of partnerships. The sun moved lower in the sky. They moved back to the barn to tend the horses and check on the livestock. The cowboy showed the son how to groom the horses and how to understand their moods and needs. He emphasized gentle care and consistency. The son followed closely, learning the subtleties of animal behavior and responding with attentiveness and care. The cowboy felt satisfaction in seeing his son succeed and growth, and approached, and they sat together on the porch looking out over the fields. The cowboy spoke quietly about the importance of family and the lessons he had learned about presence and attention. He reminded the son that making time for each other and for meaningful moments was the most important work they could do together. The son nodded, understanding the weight of the message and the opportunity they had to rebuild their connection. They spoke about dreams and hopes for the future. The cowboy shared ideas about projects on the ranch, and the son shared thoughts about school and skills he wanted to learn. The conversation was filled with curiosity and mutual respect. The cowboy felt that the relationship was beginning to shift from cautious observation to genuine connection and understanding. Night fell, and they walked together to check the animals. One last time, the stars appeared overhead and the quiet of the ranch surrounded them. The cowboy felt a deep sense of gratitude for the time they had spent and the opportunity to guide and nurture his son. The son felt relief and joy in the presence and attention of his father. He realized that small steps and consistent effort could build trust and love. They shared small reflections about the day. The cowboy spoke about patience and the value of consistent effort in relationships as well as in work. The son shared his feelings of growth and understanding. The quiet conversations strengthened their bond and created a foundation for trust and shared experience. The day had been both physical and emotional, creating memories that would last. The cowboy realized that presence and attention were the greatest gifts he could offer. His wealth and accomplishments on the ranch were significant, but they could not replace the time and care spent with his son. The son realized that connection required patience and openness, and that he could build trust through shared experiences. In communication, the night continued with quiet reflection. They knew the future would require effort and attention. They knew mistakes and misunderstandings might occur, but they were committed to trying. The bond was growing stronger with each shared task and conversation. The cowboy felt hope for the first time in years that the relationship could be nurtured and sustain them. Ranch remained a place of work and responsibility, but it had also become a place of connection and learning. The cowboy and his son had begun to understand each other and to share the rhythms of daily life in a way that created closeness and understanding. The simple acts of working side by side and speaking honestly formed a bridge over the years of absence, they ended the day with quiet moments looking at the horizon. The wind carried the smell of grass and earth, and the distant sound of animals settling in for the night. The cowboy and his son felt a sense of accomplishment, not in the work completed, but in the progress of their relationship. They had taken another step toward healing and understanding, and the promise of shared days ahead. The cowboy reflected on the importance of patience, effort, and care in nurturing connections. He realized that the greatest strength was not only in physical work, but also in emotional presence and guidance. The son reflected on the power of trust and attention and the ways small gestures could create deep bonds. They went to sleep with hearts full of hope and determination, ready to face another day together. The morning was quiet, and the cowboy woke feeling a sense of purpose. He looked at his son sleeping peacefully and felt gratitude for the time they had spent together. The day promised more work on the ranch, but also more opportunities to grow closer and strengthen the bond that had been neglected for so long. They began by checking the animals together. The cowboy showed the son how to recognize subtle signs of illness or distress. In the livestock, the son listened carefully, asking questions and following instructions. He began to understand that attention to detail and care were essential, not just for the animals, but for all relationships in life. The cowboy watched and felt pride in his son's attentiveness and willingness to learn. After tending the animals, they moved to the fields to work on planting new crops. The cowboy explained the importance of timing and precision in planting. He showed how to measure and prepare the soil, and how to ensure each seed was placed carefully for the best chance of growth. The son followed closely, learning the rhythm and patience required for such work. As they worked, they spoke quietly about dreams and hopes. The son shared his plans for school and future skills he wanted to develop. The cowboy listened and offered gentle guidance and encouragement. He reminded the son that hard work and patience would lead to success, and that he would always be there to offer support and advice. The conversation created trust and understanding that had been missing for years. During the afternoon, they repaired a section of fence that had been damaged by a recent storm. The cowboy handed tools to his son and demonstrated techniques, carefully showing how to use strength and patience together. The son worked diligently, learning from the guidance and observing closely how his father approached problems. The task became a shared experience, strengthening their connection. They paused under the shade of a large tree to rest. The cowboy spoke about lessons he had learned in life about responsibility and the importance of caring for others. He emphasized that strength was not only in physical ability, but also in patience, understanding, and emotional presence. The son absorbed the words, realizing that the bond they were building required effort from both of them. After the break, they rode horses together through the fields. The cowboy showed how to guide the horses with subtle movements, and the son followed attentively, learning the importance of observation and gentle guidance. The shared activity created trust and a sense of partnership. The cowboy noticed the growth in his son and felt hope for the future of their relationship. They returned to the barn to tend the horses and prepare for the evening. The cowboy demonstrated grooming and feeding routines, emphasizing consistency and care. The son followed closely, asking questions and participating fully. He realized that attention to small details could have a large impact, and that shared responsibility strengthened trust and respect between them. Evening approached, and they sat on the porch looking out over the fields. The cowboy spoke quietly about the value of family and the importance of being present for one another. He reminded the son that the past could not be changed, but that the future was theirs to shape through effort and attention. The son listened, understanding the weight of the message and the opportunities that lay ahead. They shared reflections about the day and the lessons learned. The cowboy emphasized patience, consistency, and empathy. The son shared his feelings of growth and understanding, wrapped in the ways he had come to appreciate the guidance and presence of his father. The conversation deepened their connection and reinforced the foundation of trust and care they had been building. As the sun set, they walked through the fields, checking the animals one last time. The quiet of the ranch surrounded them, and the stars appeared overhead. The cowboy felt a deep sense of gratitude for the day and the opportunity to nurture his relationship with his son. The son felt hope and belonging, knowing that he was seen, heard, and valued by his father. They spoke about dreams for the future and ways they could continue to grow together. The cowboy shared plans for the ranch and invited the son to participate and contribute ideas. The son shared thoughts and hopes for learning and exploration. The conversation was filled with curiosity and mutual respect, and it strengthened the bond between them. Night fell, and they prepared for rest. The cowboy reflected on the journey they had taken from distance to connection. He understood that patience, attention, and consistent effort were essential to nurturing relationships. The son reflected on the power of presence and guidance, and the ways that small acts of care could create deep bonds. The ranch remained a place of work and responsibility, but it had also become a place of learning, connection, and growth. The cowboy and his son had begun to understand each other and to share the rhythms of daily life in a way that created closeness and understanding. The simple acts of working side by side and speaking openly had formed a bridge over years of absence. They went to sleep with hearts full of hope and determination. Ready to face another day together, the cowboy knew that challenges would continue to arise, but he also knew that the bond with his son was strong enough to weather difficulties. The son knew that the presence and guidance of his father would continue to nurture his growth and understanding. The next morning brought the promise of more work and more shared experiences. The cowboy and his son rose early and prepared for the day, knowing that each moment together was an opportunity to strengthen their relationship and to build memories that would last. The ranch was alive with the sounds of animals, wind, and the quiet rhythms of life, and it now carried the sound of connection and care. The day unfolded with tending the animals, repairing fences, and working the fields. Each task was an opportunity to teach and to learn. Each conversation was an opportunity to listen and to understand. Each shared moment was a step toward healing the years of absence and building a future filled with trust, love, and mutual respect. As the sun moved across the sky, the cowboy and his son worked side by side, learning patience, effort, and care through the rhythm of ranch life. They spoke about dreams, hopes, and lessons in life. Their bond grew stronger with each passing hour. The cowboy felt the joy of presence and guidance. The son felt the strength of connection and understanding. Evening arrived, and they returned to the porch, looking out over the fields. The cowboy spoke about the value of family presence and patience. The son shared his thoughts about growth, learning, and the importance of connection. The quiet conversation created a sense of closeness and understanding that had been missing for years. Night settled over the ranch. The cowboy and his son reflected on the day and the journey they had taken. The past with its absences and regrets remained, but the present offered hope, opportunity, and the possibility of growth. Their hearts were full of hope and commitment, ready to continue nurturing the bond. They had begun to rebuild. The cowboy had everything he had built and achieved, but he now understood that the greatest wealth was not land or animals or respect, but love, connection, and presence with the son he had longed to know. The son realized that the bond they were building was stronger than years of absence, and that with effort, patience, and care, they could create a relationship that lasted. The ranch remained a place of work and responsibility, but it had also become a place of learning, connection, and growth. The cowboy and his son had begun to understand each other and to share life together. Their bond had been strengthened through patience, guidance, and shared experience, and they looked forward to the future with hope and determination. The morning broke with soft light spilling across the ranch. The cowboy woke with a sense of calm and purpose. He looked at his son and felt a quiet pride in how far they had come together. The past was still there, but the present offered new possibilities, and each day brought chances to strengthen their bond. Began the day with the animals. The cowboy showed his son how to check the horses and cows, carefully noticing subtle signs of health or discomfort. The son followed, closely learning how to observe and respond with patience and care. Each moment spent together created understanding and trust, and reminded the cowboy of the importance of presence and guidance. After feeding the animals, they moved to a section of the fields that needed attention. The cowboy showed how to prepare the soil for planting. He explained the importance of consistency and patience. The The son listened attentively, asking questions and trying to understand not just the work, but the lessons behind it. The cowboy watched and felt a deep sense of connection and responsibility. They worked side by side through the morning. The cowboy spoke quietly about life lessons learned from his own experiences. He told stories of challenges faced alone and how he had learned to persevere and adapt. The son listened carefully, absorbing the guidance and reflecting on how it could help him grow and make better choices. The conversation created a bridge between past and present. During a brief rest, they sat under a large tree. The cowboy encouraged the son to share thoughts and feelings. He spoke about the value of honesty and trust and how these qualities strengthen relationships. The son shared small worries and hopes and felt relief in being heard and understood. The exchange deepened their bond and created a sense of mutual respect and understanding. They moved on to repair a fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. The cowboy demonstrated how to handle tools safely and efficiently. The son followed instructions, carefully learning not only the practical skills, but also the importance of patience and precision. The shared work created a rhythm of cooperation and trust that strengthened their connection. The afternoon brought them to a small creek where they checked water levels and cared for animals coming to drink. The cowboy showed how to ensure the water was safe and accessible. He emphasized thinking ahead and considering the needs of all creatures. The son followed closely, learning the importance of observation and preparation. The activity was both practical and symbolic of the attention needed in all aspects of life. They rode horses through the fields together. The cowboy demonstrated how to communicate with the horse through subtle movements and voice. The son practiced carefully, learning to read the animal and respond with gentleness and confidence. The shared experience created trust and a sense of partnership. The cowboy felt pride in his son's growth and ability to learn. As the day passed, they returned to the barn to tend the horses and organize supplies. The cowboy emphasized routine and consistency, explaining how small daily actions contribute to long-term success and stability. The son participated fully and began to see the connection between careful effort and results in both work and relationships. The lessons were practical and meaningful. Evening approached, and they sat on the porch watching the sky change colors. The cowboy spoke quietly about the importance of family connection and the value of shared time and effort. He reminded the son that love and attention required presence and consistency, and that building trust took patience and care. The son listened, understanding the depth of the words and the commitment needed to nurture relationships. They reflected on the day and shared small insights. The cowboy encouraged the son to recognize his own growth and to be patient with himself as he learned new skills and lessons. The son expressed gratitude for guidance and care and realized that connection required effort and openness. The quiet conversations strengthened their bond and created a foundation for continued growth and understanding. Night fell, and they walked through the fields one last time. The cowboy felt a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity to guide and nurture his son. The son felt hope and belonging, knowing that his father was present and committed to being a part of his life. The ranch was quiet except for the sounds of animals settling and the gentle wind through the grass and trees. They spoke softly about hopes for the future and the adventures they could share together. The cowboy invited the son to contribute ideas and plans for the ranch and for their time together. The son shared thoughts about skills he wanted to develop and experiences he hoped to have. The conversation was filled with curiosity and mutual respect and reinforced the growing connection between them. As they prepared for bed, the cowboy reflected on the journey from distance to connection. He understood that patience, attention, and consistent effort were essential to nurturing relationships. He knew that mistakes and setbacks would come, but that dedication and care could heal old wounds and create lasting bonds. The son reflected on the importance of trust, presence, and guidance, and the ways small acts of care could create deep connection. The ranch remained a place of work and responsibility, but it had also become a place of learning, connection, and growth. The cowboy and his son had begun to understand each other, share the rhythms of daily life in a way that created closeness and understanding. The simple acts of working together and speaking openly had formed a bridge over years of absence and created hope for the future. They went to sleep with hearts full of hope and determination, ready to face another day together. The cowboy knew that challenges would continue to arise, but he also knew that the bond with his son was strong enough to weather difficulties. The son knew that the presence and guidance of his father would continue to nurture his growth and understanding. The next morning brought more work and more opportunities for connection. They tended the animals, repaired fences, and worked the fields together. Each task was a chance to teach and learn, each conversation a chance to listen and understand, each shared moment a step toward healing and strengthening the bond. They continued to build trust, love, and mutual respect through patience, guidance, and shared experiences. The sun moved across the sky. The cowboy and his son worked side by side, learning the rhythms of ranch life and the lessons behind each task. They spoke about dreams, hopes, and lessons in life. Their bond grew stronger with every moment.
Ow.
The cowboy felt joy in being present and guiding. The son felt the strength of connection and the comfort of being understood. Arrived, and they returned to the porch, watching the sky and reflecting on the day. The cowboy spoke of patience, presence, and the value of small, consistent efforts. The son shared insights about growth and understanding and the importance of being open to learning and connection. The quiet conversation deepened their understanding and created a sense of closeness and belonging. The longing night settled over the ranch. The cowboy and his son reflected on their journey. The past, with its absences and regrets, remained, but the present offered hope, opportunity, and the promise of growth. Their hearts were full of hope and commitment, ready to continue nurturing the bond they had begun to rebuild. And the ranch was alive with the quiet rhythms of life and the sound of connection and care.